Good morning, Abundant Life Church. This is Pastor Chris. Today we're going to be continuing our look at Romans chapter 9, verses 24 through 29. And where we left off, we were talking about the idea that the Jews were God's chosen people in the Old Testament. They said no to the Messiah God sent, so God said, okay, well, I'll go to the Gentiles then. So we're God's second choice. How are we supposed to feel about that? This is a question we really should explore. Otherwise, we're going to be left with the feeling that we are second class citizens or that God didn't create everybody equally. So, what is the answer? Are we in the covenant now just because the Jews said no? They turned their spot down? If that's not the case, then how does this work? Well, like a good lawyer, Paul produces the evidence to show how God's plan was really meant to work. First, we have to absolutely understand this. God's plan all along was to bring the Gentiles in. Okay, that's Paul's thesis statement. God's plan from the beginning was not just Jews and not Gentiles. From the beginning, it was to bring everybody in. We're not second class citizens, we're not an afterthought. Okay, well, why didn't God just bring everybody in from the beginning? Well, because he had a reason for that. Let's look at, if my phone will stop turning off. Somebody's going to need to show me how to do that someday. Let's start here with verse 24. Even us, whom he called not only from the Jews, but also from the Gentiles, as he says in Hosea. I will call them my people who are not my people, and I will call her my beloved one who is not my beloved one. And in the very place where it was said to them, you are not my people, there they will be called children of the living God. Back in the Old Testament book of Hosea, back when it was just the Jews were God's chosen people, they're talking about the fact that no, there's coming a day when the Gentiles are going to be considered the children of God as well. We think the original Old Testament plan went like this. If you're born an Israelite, you're automatically in. If you're born a Gentile, you're automatically out. Paul's arguing that wasn't the case. And he's backing this up with a quote from the prophet Hosea. Now, the thing about Hosea, remember his wife. Remember his wife's name? That's right, Gomer. Parents, don't name your daughters Gomer. Don't name your sons Gomer either. Okay, just no Gomers. But Hosea's wife Gomer wasn't faithful to him. She was a prostitute, and she continued to be a prostitute after they got married. God told him, go marry Gomer. Hosea wasn't the father of her second child. He wasn't the father of their third child. So he named the second child unable to show love to this child. He named the third one, not my people. Those are not happy names. Maybe Gomer doesn't sound so bad after all. The point is, though, that some people were not God's people. But God is using this to make a point. He's saying this is going to change. Those people who are called literally not my people, someday they are going to be my people. This prophecy meant that, yes, even the Gentiles, even the not my people, are someday going to be in. This was God's plan all along. He was planning to open the door to them. Letting us in wasn't just a reaction to the Jews rejecting him. It was the plan all along. We were wanted. We were planned for. We're not a second choice, and we should not think that way. We have some friends of ours back in Idaho. Their children were about the same age as our children. And their oldest daughter, Sarah, when she was like 7 or 8 years old, she was diagnosed with a 5-pound cancerous tumor in her chest cavity. That's serious. Well, here's the thing, just to let you know, Sarah today is doing great. She's a real estate agent in Boise. She has 2 great kids. She's fine, full recovery. But for a year, they had to, cancer treatment, surgeries. It was a pretty brutal year. And to start it all off, they needed a complete medical history on the family. So they needed her dad's medical history, any history of cancer, any history of this illness or that illness. Mom's as well. It took quite some time to go through all the medical history. And about a half hour or so into talking with the doctor, it dawned on them. Doctor, we forgot. Sarah's adopted. Here's the point of that story. They had one child by birth and one child adopted. They loved Sarah so much and treated her just like their other child. In their minds, they had forgotten, wait, she's adopted. That speaks of a special level of love in a family and for parents. You're not second class. You see, this is how God thinks of us. We're not settled for. So, true. God's plan meant that Gentiles originally were not, I'm sorry, let me start that over. God's plan meant that Gentiles weren't automatically going to be kept out. But on the other hand, Jews are not automatically in because they're Jews. So it doesn't matter how you were born. Let's look at verses 27 through 29. Paul quotes a couple more Old Testament prophets. Well, one, Isaiah. Isaiah cries out concerning Israel, though the number of Israelites be like the sand of the sea, only the remnant will be saved. For the Lord will carry out his sentence on earth with speed and finality. Just because you're a Jew doesn't mean you'll be saved. Verse 29, it is just as Isaiah said previously, unless the Almighty had left us descendants, we would become like Sodom. We would have been like Gomorrah. Paul uses these prophecies to show the Jews are not automatically in just because they're Jews. God promised Abraham his descendants. They're going to be as numerous as the sand, but Isaiah prophesies that not all those descendants are going to be saved, only a remnant. Some of God's chosen people are going to leave him and fall away to idols. Not all of them. There will be a remnant. Who would that remnant be? Glad you asked. Those who kept the faith and had not wandered away from God. Let's say that again. Who were the Jews that were going to be in the remnant? Those who had faith in God and didn't stray from that faith. So wasn't it faith that saved those Jews, not the fact that they were born Jews? So God's plan about whose chosen people were has always been about who had faith. If a Jew had faith, of course they're going to be saved. And now with Jesus, that way is open for anyone, for Jew or for Gentile, as long as they have faith. You don't get in automatically because of who you are, because of who your parents are. You don't get in and you don't get kept out because of who you are. The only thing that matters is coming to God in faith. All comes back to faith. Once again, let's remember that God didn't let us in because the Jews turned him down. We're not his second choice after all. God judges us on faith alone. And so if we have faith, if we have what it takes to be his chosen people, no matter who we are, and say, well, hang on a second, Pastor, then why didn't God do that plan from the very beginning? Why didn't God from day one say anybody who has faith can come to me? Why the whole only giving the law, only giving the covenant to the Jews? I'm glad you asked. Tune in next time and we'll talk about that. Till then, have a great day.